it should be displayed?
Well, in Florida, we don't have it in government buildings, and I agree with that decision. Obviously, in South Carolina, as I've said earlier in the week, I believe and continue to believe that that state is going to make the right choice, and they've proven that through the leadership of their governor. They are now taking actions to address it. The flag you talk about in Florida, I believe, is on private property. I don't think you can do anything about private property. But most certainly, I believe that in Florida, we've made the right decision by moving the flag to museums. And I see South Carolina and other states are doing it as well. But again, I have a lot of trust in the political leadership in the state and the people of South Carolina to make the right choice, and they've proven that already, that they're making it.
We're also going to see a Supreme Court decision coming down on gay marriage. If the court strikes down bans, is the issue settled, or are you going to join other Republicans?
Well, settled only in the sense that there's going to be a Supreme Court ruling that will disagree with us. There are others that we disagree with.
Would you continue to fight against same-sex marriage?
Well, I've always said it should be up to the states to decide and define and regulate marriage. They regulate marriage now. What I don't believe is that courts should do it. I believe the legislative branch or the voters should do it. And if a state like Florida, over 60% of our voters chose to define in our Constitution marriage as an institution between one man and one woman, courts should not be able to overturn that. Other states may reach a different conclusion, and they have a right to do that, even if I disagree with it. I don't think courts should be making that decision.
Does New Hampshire deserve or need a full-service VA hospital?
Well, I most certainly think that if you look at the per capita number of veterans that are here, and the ones that are not being serviced by a hospital, most certainly worthy of serious exploration, especially if the services aren't being provided. But an even better approach, not just that, but an even better approach is to truly give real choice to veterans to access health care in any facility that is willing to take them in a high-quality, time-effective way. And that's not happening now either.
Donald Trump has been rising in the polls. He's also had some tough talk, some tough language directed at you. Should we be taking Donald Trump seriously? And what do you have to say about his comments?
Guys, I'm going to focus on my campaign and on my message. One of the reasons Barack Obama is the president of the United States today is because Republicans in the last election spent an inordinate amount of time attacking each other and calling each other names. We'll have disagreements on policy. I look forward to that debate. But my message is going to be about the future of America. I'm not running against any other Republican. I am running because I believe this country needs to confront the challenges of the 21st century and embrace its opportunities. And if we do, we're going to have another American century. And that's what I'm going to focus on.
Senator,
two hostages from New Hampshire, two slain
the links
hostages
to
from New Hampshire,
correct, including the Sotloff family that's now in Florida.
Right. Can you reiterate your reaction to the hostage policy that you talked about?
Well, look, I don't believe this country was ever going to prosecute, or should, parents that are acting and families that are acting desperately in the best interest of their children and their families. I do think it's important, on the other hand, and it's a tough decision, but we have to understand that when you negotiate with terrorists, you are in essence incentivizing them to take more hostages in the future. You place other Americans, including servicemen and women, in danger. I know the Sotloff family personally. We worked with them on that case, and our heart broke for them and continues to break for what they've gone through. And by no means do I believe the government should or was going, I hope, prosecute them for what all these families were trying to do. They were trying to do whatever they could to get their loved one back. But as a matter of public policy, our government cannot be negotiating with terrorists because you're basically going to incentivize them to take more Americans.
Senator, in the wake of
Walker often says that he's receiving encouragement for a Walker Rubio ticket. What do you make of that rhetoric, and how often do you talk about that?
Well, a Walker Rubio ticket may be fine, but it's got to be in alphabetical order.
Senator, in the wake of the Charleston shooting, Senator Graham came out and cited the failure of the background check system. Additionally, the president came out after and said that the rate of gun deaths was far higher here than in other advanced nations. Why do you think that is? And secondly, do you support Senator Graham's call to improve the background check system, maybe by expanding them?
I support anything that will help us keep guns out of the hands of criminals and dangerous people. Whether it's that improving the background check or some other measure is what we need to be talking about. But here's the bottom line. We have a Second Amendment in our Constitution. And whether people agree with it or not, it is in the Constitution. It is a constitutional right that I do agree with. I believe Americans have a right to defend themselves and their families. Here's what I know about laws. Only law-abiding people follow them. Criminals do not follow the law. That's why they're called criminals. In this case, it appears potentially, or perhaps in fact, if the facts bear to be true, that this deranged, racist individual had access to a gun in violation of the law and of the existing law. So ultimately, gun laws are not the most effective way, proven time and again, to reduce gun violence. If that were the case, some of the cities and states with the most stringent gun rights laws would be the safest, and they are not. So I believe in the Second Amendment, and I believe in the right of Americans to bear arms and to have the ability to protect their families and their homes.
But if Senator Manchin and Senator Toomey revive their bill that failed 2 years ago. Would you?
I think it's ineffective, and it won't achieve what we're trying to achieve, which is keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. Criminals don't care what the law is. That's why they're criminals.
So maybe there are a lot of Latinos who said that they were offended by Mr. Trump's comments in his announcement about Mexicans. Do you feel that that is helpful to your party, that kind of rhetoric in the GOP's race?
Well, guys, again, I'm not in the business today of addressing and taking on other candidates for the race. They'll be held accountable by the voters for what they say. I can tell you what I believe, and particularly about Mexican Americans. They are a community that has contributed greatly to this country. They work extremely hard. They've been very productive and citizens of our country, and I think that's true for a lot of different ethnic groups in our country, and that diversity is one of the strengths this country has.
Last question.
Senator, there was a poll from the NBC and Wall Street Journal over the weekend said that 33%, I think it was, of Americans think that the biggest problem facing the country is money in politics, and there's a disconnect. Today you're having 2 events sponsored by Koch brother organizations. There's a story in the Washington Post this morning about your ties to try to appeal to Sheldon Adelson. What can you say to Americans who say that is a big problem and you're hearing them?
When people buy into my agenda, I don't buy into theirs. When I run for office, I tell people where I stand. And if people want to support me, they do. And if they don't, they oppose me because they don't agree with my stand. My stands are not influenced by my contributors. I hope my stands influence my contributors. So people that contribute to our campaign know where I stand on the issues, and they decide to support or not support me on the basis of that. But as I said, our donors and our supporters, they buy into our agenda. We don't necessarily buy into theirs.
So you co-sponsored this anti-online casino bill because you've long time
I have a long history of opposing an expansion of gambling. I believe that for the most part, gambling, especially that kind of gambling, is a tax on the poor. It does little to develop the economy. And I go back to my record in Florida, you'll see I opposed every expansion of gambling. Fine. Well, Vegas is Las Vegas, and they have a right to have in Las Vegas any gambling they want. They have laws, they have legislators, they can vote on what they want or not want. And they have elected officials there that make up their laws. In Florida, I have a long history of opposing an expansion of gambling. And when you talk about online gambling, that comes into Florida. And that is potentially people, including young people, that are going to go online and gamble and lose money. And I just don't believe that's the right approach for our country. Okay? Thank you, guys.
I'm not pushing you. Is she pushing you?
I'm pushing him.
You would know when I'm going this way if I'm pushing you? Okay.